Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew. We're in chapter 6, and I'm going to be reading verses 19 through 24 today. Jesus has just given us our 3 love languages for expressing our love and our devotion to God: serving others, praying, fasting. And now he's going to talk about that devotion and the competition for our affections. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and your possessions. Okay. It's easy for us to look at each one of these as individual thoughts, not necessarily connected, but they are. They are. It's about where our heart is. The whole section of these verses is about where our heart is, what matters to you. What matters to you should be in heaven, with God, where God is. That's what your treasure is. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. If it's here in this material world, then it's at risk. In the first place, it's temporary. In the second place, someone can come along and take it. It's not going to last, and you can't hold on to it anyway. Even if it did last, someone stronger or smarter can come along and take it from you, and you know that. We can hear Jesus almost saying, and you know that. What we have with God, we have permanently. As Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 1, it's unfading, and it doesn't fade away. It is permanent. It can't be taken from you. It is yours to keep. God is protecting it for you in heaven. And that's what he heard Jesus say that on this very day. And then he says, you got to see things properly to appreciate their true value. The lamp of the body is the eye. It's about the way you perceive. We have more senses than sight, and of course sight he's using as a metaphor for the greater notion of our perception and the way we perceive things. But we use sight to this day in that way. We can say, come and see if this smells bad. Come and see if if this sounds off to you. And we use sight to describe the other senses. Or we can say, why can't you see things my way? That doesn't mean, why can't you open your eyes and see something that's physically there? It's about perception. And that's what Jesus is talking about our perception. And he says, if your perception is right, is correct, if you're seeing the world the way I showed it to you back in chapter 5, if you're seeing that way, then you're going to be good. Not that you're flawless, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be sound. But if you persist in seeing the material world through that grimy window of the sinful world itself, then how great is the darkness that's in you? And then he says this, you can't serve 2 masters. This is so simple. This is the way Jesus communicates, simply. Jesus is not a man who builds elegant, complicated 40-page arguments to get to the point. He doesn't do that, and we don't do it either if we're communicating truth. No man can serve 2 masters. It's that simple. You can say it in a simple sentence. If you have 2 masters, you're going to love one, hate the other, cling to the one, reject the other. You can't do that. And then the hammer comes down and he tells us, who is the competitor for our affections? Is it glory? Is it Satan himself? Is it I don't know, Power? What is it? No, it's your stuff. You can't serve God and your stuff and your possessions. Just think for a second about the things that you have and the time and money you spend to acquire and maintain them. How much of your time and resources do your things require of you? Most of it. Most of it. Jesus says you cannot serve God and your stuff. The more stuff you have, the greater pull your stuff has on you, and the less you will be connected to God. Now, Jesus makes that equation. We like to go to 1 Timothy and say that things, money, possessions, don't have any intrinsic value in themselves. That's not true at all. Jesus says they do. Jesus says you have to have some stuff. We have homes that we live in, yes. You're a fisherman, you got a boat. You're a fisherman, you've got nets. But all those things have to be maintained, and they require your time and your resources, yes. And if that's what matters to you, and acquiring more and more things matters to you, you're not loving God. You can't possibly love God because you can't love them both. Jesus says that, yes, they do. They do have a certain negative intrinsic value. So anyway, that's something that we have to come to grips with in our culture and in our country. We experience so much prosperity, and when it is dented to bits, we're ready to change governments. We're ready for heads to roll. We don't like to see ourselves in this light, but we have to, because look at what's at stake. Jesus teaches us how to express our love for God, and then he says, but listen, you're not going to love him at all if this is who you are. There's a therefore in the next verse, and we'll talk about that therefore next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.